Dissociative identity disorder is a, dissociative disorder characterized by the presence of alters or alternative identity states, followed by intense dissociation, amnesia, and unstable identity. This is a trauma-based disorder formed in early childhood, and symptoms may show up later into adulthood or start in early childhood, but it is always formed in childhood. Diagnosis requires a detailed assessment, usually by a psychologist, including medical history and symptoms. It often takes around 7 years to get a proper diagnosis from starting with a mental health professional. It is commonly misunderstood that DID is a personality disorder, as its previous name was multiple personality disorder when it had minimal research. It is also called split personality, used for entertainment purposes. A fun fact is that DID is diagnosed in around 1% of the population, while schizophrenia only makes up 0.3 to 0.7%. So the idea that DID is rare is a myth. It is even more common than schizophrenia as you finally research more into it. So DID terminology, usually used in therapeutic spaces. So a system is the collection and collaboration of all of the parts or alters within one body. Polyfragmented is a DID system with hundreds or thousands of alters. This is the result of complex dissociative identity disorder due to repeated and severe trauma. An alter is a dissociated and alternate state of identity, with their own age, gender, sexuality, perceived appearance, desires, memories, and even different skills and thoughts, otherwise referred to as parts, headmates, or system mates. So front refers to the conscious and external world outside of our minds, and the fronter is the alter currently conscious and in control of that body. But there can also be multiple at once, which tends to be the term for co-fronting. There are multiple alters in control at once, while co-conscious refers to the alters that are conscious but listening in and expressing opinions without having control at that given moment. An inner world refers to the imaginative or safe place used by patients as a therapeutic tool for internal communication, which can already be made or might need therapeutic guidance on the creation of it. This can also be used in non-DID patients, known as a special place in EMDR therapy. So roles for alters would be the host, which refers to the primary alter who fronts the most or is the main personality. The protectors are alters that are responsible for protecting the body and or the other alters from potential harm or harmful experiences. The gatekeepers are alters that can either control the memories, control switching, or responsible for the general alter organization, which highly varies the definition on the individual. A persecutor would be an alter that holds anger and fear. They often lash out and engage in self-destructive behaviors, but it's important to note that they are not evil alters, as seen in media, but a misguided one who would need extra care and support. A caretaker is an alter that cares for the others emotionally. They often are seen as a parental or older sibling-like figure. And then littles are going to be alters that are regressed parts, typically between the ages of 2 to 10 years old, and they tend to be extremely sensitive and have a need for security. So the 5 main types of dissociative disorders are going to be dissociative identity disorder, derealization/depersonalization disorder, dissociative amnesia, unspecified dissociative disorder, and other specified dissociative disorder. The main trauma disorders are going to be PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, acute stress disorder, adjustment disorders, reactive attachment disorder, disinhibited social engagement disorder, and prolonged grief disorder. Now in these two categories tend to go hand in hand. PTSD is the main contributor to dissociative disorders. Structural dissociation theory is the framework for understanding how dissociation and trauma affects the brain. It was developed by Onno van der Hart, Ellert Ninjonis, and Kathy Steele. The two concepts of SD are the presence of course, ANPs and EPs. The apparently normal parts are going to be responsible for daily function and avoidance of traumatic memories, which can lead to amnesia surrounding the event. Emotional parts are the trauma-holding parts that are fixated on the event. Experience unstable and unresolved emotions, somatic events, which relates to your physical, and a constant or easily activated fight or flight response. Trauma causes a fragmented sense of self and a division between these two parts. Patients will switch between these two depending on triggers and stress, often unaware of the shift. Now, it is important to note here that apparently normal parts are going to be what we would call our main personality. Our emotional parts are going to be those bursts of emotions and pure memories of traumatic events. Usually the part you're in when you have flashbacks, when you have panic attacks, etc. So in this table here, we get to see what the A&P life is like and the EP life is like. The A&P kind of goes on with normal life, focuses on normal life goals. The trauma parts, the EPs, are specifically focused into these fight or flight response. They can be in a fight, they can be in a flight, a freeze, a submit, or an attach response, any or. It's also important to note that for DID, people tend to misdiagnose them as PTSD or CPTSD just by themselves, a borderline personality disorder, bipolar 1 and 2, and schizophrenia and other psychotic-related disorders, because all these disorders can have a separation between A&Ps and EPs, but it is important to note that only dissociative identity disorders will have multiple A&Ps or personalities. There are 3 levels of structural dissociation, ranging from mild to severe. The mild will be level 1, primary structural dissociation. It's linked to one distressing event and PTSD. It involves one A&P and then one EP. The main symptoms are going to be flashbacks, feeling numb, and fear of anything related to the event. Your level 2 will be secondary dissociation. This is related to chronic trauma and complex PTSD or CPTSD. It involves multiple EPs, but only one primary A&P. Main symptoms are unstable emotions, identity disturbance, and interpersonal issues, as well as chronic dissociation. Now, your level 3 will be the most severe and tertiary structural dissociation. This is specific to DID. It involves multiple A&Ps and multiple EPs. Symptoms are severe and significantly impact daily function. So your structural dissociation is associated with 2 different things. One is internal family systems, which is IFS. IFS therapy is a therapeutic tool which separates different thoughts and feelings from each other. IFS is a healthy and typical aspect of being human. It causes zero impairment in function, and instead it helps patients with inner harmony and healing. However, the ego state theory, not a therapeutic tool nor a disorder, but it is a theory on how we develop in childhood. Ego states are multiple states of self that integrate into a whole personality typically. However, in DID, trauma forms these amnesic barriers to keep these ego states separate. As they grow up, these ego states are separated and they develop their own personalities. When personality integrates at around the ages of 6 to 9, that is when DID is formed. So it is important to note here, based on the information provided, that trauma is required to have DID as it can only develop around those early ages, and it is not possible to split a fully formed identity into multiple A&Ps. So in the dissociative spectrum, we have the mild to severe. The mild would be highway hypnosis or the trance-like state we get while driving or daydreaming. Then we have concentration, dissociative amnesia or the fugue, PTSD, complex PTSD, other dissociative disorders under the umbrella, and then some personality disorders like narcissistic, borderline, and schizoid have very high levels of dissociation, as well as DID, and then the most severe polyfragmented DID. So treatment and management of this disorder is quite complicated, as you can imagine. It is important to note that splits are very important to understanding how to treat. So a split is the creation of a new alter, and alters are not always set in childhood, as they can split due to any form of major or minor stress and trauma at any age. So splits can happen at any time due to any kind of minor event. So it is important to note that when we are caring for someone with DID. So, structural dissociation recommends a step-by-step treatment for DID, the step 1 being stabilization and symptom reduction. This includes emotional regulation, grounding, and internal communication among these fragmented parts. The best method for step 1 is going to be sensory motor psychotherapy for mind-body connection, which is essential for dissociation and alters. Step 2, this will be the treating the traumatic memories. Integration of traumatic memories, open communication between alters. The best method for this is going to be eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, or EMDR therapy. It is the best therapeutic tool for trauma-based treatment and essential for the communication between ANPs and EPs. Step 3 will be basically our end goal, personality integration. This is the end treatment goal, but can range from partial to full integration depending on the individual. Some DID patients have too many to fully integrate or simply prefer not to. These tend to be common in polyfragmented DID systems. Those people tend to have a resolution where parts can fully communicate, share thoughts and feelings, and all have healthy methods to deal with daily function and stress without a true integration of these alters. However, if it is prudent to have integration of these alters, there are multiple methods for integration, like parts integration therapy or cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, that is tailored to the individual. Also, that the medications that is prescribed for DID are not going to be prescribed specifically for the DID symptoms. It would be for co-occurring depression, anxiety, psychosis, or unstable mood, like SSRIs, SNRIs, mood stabilizers, etc. Medication does not help the primary symptoms associated with DID, for instance, dissociation, alters, PTSD, and memory loss. These need to be addressed through therapy, and medication should only be used as a boost. So the neuroscience of DID is quite fascinating. I have put the source at the end so that you can read the science for yourself. DID is often thought to be a made-up disorder or that is mistaken for psychosis and delusion. However, the neuroscience proves otherwise. There have been many studies on the brains of people with DID and dissociative disorders. Using fMRIs and other forms of brain imaging, scientists found significant evidence of visible changes caused by dissociation. During typical identity shifts in DID, there is a change in communication between the amygdala, your fear response, the hippocampus, your memory, and the prefrontal cortex, your control center. All of these communicate for the transition of identity states, then a jump to a unique neural signature of brain activation, indicating the switch of alters. There is also significant overactivation of overall brain activity in EPs versus a significant deactivation in ANPs associated with memory and biological responses to traumatic memories and events. ANPs in DID share similar aspects to the ANP of a healthy individual in comparison, hence the multiple personalities. Evidence has found that these changes cannot be easily faked or exaggerated, so we know that these tests can be quite reliable. Trauma is the direct cause of this special communication system in the alternate identity states, leading to distress and chronic brain differences. The reality of DID is quite different than what we might think. Symptoms that will be presented would be constant dissociation. This can look like severe daydreaming or being on autopilot, not feeling real or believe that nothing else is real, forgetting important memories, ideas, feelings, even names, PTSD-related nightmares, panic attacks, or fear, and hearing voices internally, not feeling in control of their own body, missing chunks of their life, constant changing opinions or feelings, and even maybe feeling like they are made up of multiple genders or sexualities, which may lead to identifying with queer identities like gender fluidity and the fluid identity of sexuality or abrosexual. So the presentation of DID is not often bold or dramatic at all. In fact, switches tend to be very much unnoticed. Switches can range from a blank expression, a shift in posture, or even a physical reaction like a twitch or shiver, but switching highly varies between the individual with the disorder. Family and friends may pick up on these differences but write them off as natural quirks, for instance, not remembering names or what happened the day before, strange energy boosts, slight change in personality, voices, or opinion, or even changes in favorite food, drinks, and items. With DID, many patients tend to feel shame for having this disorder, usually because of the criticism and isolation surrounding it. Dissociative identity disorder, as a complex dissociative disorder that involves dissociation and the presence of multiple identity states, will result in significant distress and impairment in daily functioning. It is not a fictional disease as we know it in media or a form of demonic possession. It is a real mental health condition associated with severe trauma at an early age. And understanding DID is about recognizing these lived experiences and ensuring individuals receive the support and respect that they deserve. Here are the sources that have been used. These are the neurosciences of the brain scans, quite interesting to check out. The therapy techniques like EMDR, CBT, and sensory motor psychotherapy, as well as ego state theory and the IFS and structural dissociation theory as a whole.